It's quiet now, here in the mountains. Just the wind through the ponderosa pines, the scent of pine smoke carried on a whisper. A silence that took me years to earn, to mend myself within. Sometimes, in the deepest stillness, I can still hear her voice, a spectral echo of promises and pronouncements that shaped my world, then shattered it. Vivienne. Her name tastes like ash in my mouth even now. A bitter reminder of how completely one person can hollow out another, leaving nothing but an empty shell where a soul once thrived. I was Julian Thorne, the painter, an artist who believed his canvas was a window to his very core. I trusted her with that window, with the light that streamed through it. I trusted her with my future, and in doing so, I laid my entire being open for her to dissect, to mimic, and ultimately, to steal. It started like a dream, the kind that feels too perfect to be real, yet you desperately want to believe in it. I was in my Santa Fe studio, a sanctuary of high ceilings and sun-drenched adobe walls, losing myself in the tactile joy of paint and brush. My work was abstract, yes, but intensely personal, each stroke a pulse from my subconscious. It wasn't commercial, not in the traditional sense, and I was fine with that. Art for me was communion, not commerce. Then Vivienne appeared. She walked into a small local gallery where a few of my pieces were quietly displayed, a whirlwind of tailored linen and striking, intelligent eyes. She introduced herself as Vivienne Dubois, an art agent from New York, newly relocated to Santa Fe, looking for authentic genius. She spoke of my work with an understanding that chilled me, as if she could see the raw nerves beneath the layers of pigment. She saw that unseen canvas, she said, the narrative beneath the abstraction. She said I had a unique voice, a profound melancholy that resonated, and that the world was ready for it. She made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time by someone outside my own artistic introspection. She promised to be the bridge between my private world and the public sphere, to protect my vision while elevating my name. Who was I to resist such an eloquent, compelling siren? She became my agent, my confidant, almost my muse. Vivienne had an uncanny ability to articulate the very essence of my artistic philosophy back to me, making me feel understood on a cellular level. She knew the language of art, the pulse of the market, and the whispers of influence. She was charming, witty, utterly persuasive. We'd spend hours discussing concepts, inspirations, the subtle nuances of light and shadow, and the emotional resonance of color. It felt like a collaboration of souls, a shared journey towards artistic transcendence. And then there was Leo, a young man in his early 20s, fresh out of art school, brimming with talent and an almost unnerving eagerness. Vivienne introduced him to me as a potential mentee, a raw talent she believed would benefit from my guidance. Leo was quiet, observant, soaking up every word, every brushstroke, every technique I shared. He had a natural affinity for abstraction, and I felt a paternal pride in nurturing his potential. He was eager to learn, to assist, to absorb my process. I saw a younger version of myself in his intense focus, his dedication. He helped me with canvases, organized my paints, and listened intently as I described the genesis of a new series, a body of work I felt would define my career. I called it Echoes of the Void, a collection exploring the fragile beauty of human solitude and the search for connection within it. Vivienne championed the idea, called it profound, monumental. She pushed for a major solo exhibition, a show that would solidify my place in the art world. It was a dizzying prospect, a lifetime's ambition crystallizing. Looking back, the only red flag I dismissed was the speed at which she seemed to expect brilliance, the subtle impatience in her eyes when I spoke of slow, organic growth. But I told myself that was just her drive, her fierce dedication to my success. The intensity of the Echoes of the Void series consumed me. I poured years of my life into it, sharing my most intimate concepts, my hard-won techniques, and the very blueprint of my creative process with Vivienne and Leo. I trusted them implicitly, believing they were my allies, helping me refine my vision for this pivotal exhibition. Vivienne's visits became more frequent, her suggestions more pointed. She would stand before a half-finished canvas, her head tilted, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. "Julian," she'd say, her voice soft but firm, "this piece, it has your depth, Yes, but perhaps a touch more accessibility? A slightly brighter palette? A hint of something more aspirational? We need to capture the eye, draw them in before they dive into the profound. I would argue, explaining the deliberate use of muted tones, the starkness meant to evoke the void. She would smile, a knowing, almost pitying smile. My dear, the market desires hope. Even in introspection, there must be a glimmer of light. Trust me on this. I understand your vision, but I also understand what sells. The psychological pressure was subtle, insidious. She never ordered me to change anything, but her gentle suggestions, her persuasive arguments, began to chip away at my confidence. I started to second-guess my instincts. Was I too melancholic? Too obscure? Was my art too much for the mainstream? Leo, meanwhile, was like a sponge, his questions growing more sophisticated, more probing. He'd ask about specific mixing ratios for my signature grays, the precise angle of a particular brushstroke, the underlying emotional trigger for certain motifs. He was always sketching in his notebook, ostensibly practicing my techniques, and I was proud to share my knowledge. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at my work with an expression I couldn't quite place, intense, almost proprietary. I dismissed it as youthful ambition. Vivienne also began to orchestrate conceptual workshops with Leo, ostensibly to help him develop his own voice, using my studio. She'd explain it as a way for me to mentor and for them to brainstorm around my themes. I was often too deep in my own creative trance to pay close attention, trusting her judgment. The air in my studio, once a sacred space of solitude, began to feel subtly charged, a place of constant observation rather than creation. I felt a growing sense of unease, a static hum beneath my skin, but every time I voiced a nascent doubt, Vivienne would soothe it away with her unwavering belief in my genius, her reassuring smile. It's just the pressure, Julian, she'd say, stroking my arm. All artists feel it before a major show. You're on the cusp of greatness. The gaslighting became a slow, creeping fog. I remember a specific argument about a triptych, the central panel of which was meant to depict a raw, almost violent sense of yearning. I had painstakingly developed a technique to layer dark pigments, creating a textured surface that seemed to absorb light, conveying the weight of the emotion. Vivienne looked at it and declared it too heavy, too bleak. Julian, she sighed, her voice laced with disappointment. We discussed this. The narrative we're building for the exhibition is about finding light within the darkness. This feels self-indulgent. It deviates from the core message we've so carefully cultivated. I protested, my voice raw with frustration. But this is the core message. The void isn't always pretty, Vivienne. It's where the real search begins. She held my gaze, her eyes cold, dismissive. You're getting lost in your own head, darling. You need to pull back, see the forest, not just the single, gnarled tree. You're too close to it. Let me guide you. I see the bigger picture, the way this will be presented to the world. She made me feel irrational, overly sensitive, uncommercial. She implied I was jeopardizing my own success, her carefully constructed narrative. I started to believe her, to question my own artistic judgment, my own sanity. Later that week, I stumbled upon a canvas in Leo's corner of the studio, partially covered by a drop cloth. It was a startling piece, using the very technique I developed for my triptych, but with a brighter, almost saccharine palette. It was undeniably my technique, my signature brushwork, but twisted, altered. My heart hammered against my ribs. I asked Leo about it, trying to keep my voice even. He stammered, saying it was just an exercise, something Vivienne had encouraged him to try, to understand my methods from the inside out. Vivienne, overhearing, swept in with her usual grace, linking her arm through mine. Oh, that. Yes, Leo is such an eager student, isn't he? He's absorbing your brilliance, Julian. It's a testament to your mentorship. We're just exploring how your influence might inspire his own nascent voice. A beautiful evolution, don't you think? She winked at me, as if we were sharing a private joke, and I, in my profound, misguided trust, allowed myself to be placated. I dismissed the unease, the sickening lurch in my gut. After all, wasn't imitation the sincerest form of flattery? And she was my agent, my protector. She would never allow my work to be undermined. Or so I believed, right up until the moment my entire world collapsed around me. The grand opening night arrived with a false promise of triumph. The gallery buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with perfume and champagne. My stomach fluttered with a nervous excitement I hadn't felt in years. This was it, the culmination of a lifetime's dedication, the unveiling of echoes of the void. Vivienne had been a vision of efficiency and charm, gliding through the crowd, her smile brilliant, her words intoxicating. She had ensured I was whisked away for a pre-opening interview, a final puff piece to build suspense. When I finally walked onto the main gallery floor, the crowd parting slightly to let me through, a chill, colder than any Santa Fe winter, permeated my bones. The space was magnificent, perfectly lit, but the art was all wrong. It was similar, terrifyingly similar to mine. The same ethereal forms, the same layered textures, the same profound sense of depth, but with an insistent, almost jarring brightness. And the labels? My blood ran cold, then roared in my ears. Leo Thorne, the new visionary. Each plaque beneath the paintings bore his name, his biography, his artistic statement. My heart seized in my chest, a physical blow. The colors drained from my face, my vision tunneling. I was in a nightmare, a waking hallucination. These were my techniques, my conceptual breakthroughs, my aesthetic choices, reinterpreted, recolored, repackaged, and presented as someone else's groundbreaking genius. Then I saw her. Vivienne, radiant in a crimson gown, standing on a small platform near the gallery's center, a microphone in her hand. Beside her, beaming with a smug, almost proprietary confidence, stood Leo. The curator, a man I'd met only briefly, was introducing Vivienne as the mastermind behind this meteoric rise, the visionary who discovered and nurtured Leo Thorne's unparalleled talent. And then Vivienne spoke, her voice amplified, resonating through the gallery, her words a hammer blow to my soul. Leo's work, she purred, her gaze sweeping over the rapt audience, represents a profound evolution in abstract expressionism. He takes the melancholic introspections of an earlier generation, an important foundation, of course, and infuses them with a vibrant, optimistic future. His new vision explores the internal landscapes of the human condition, but always with a transcendent hope, a brighter tomorrow. It's truly original genius, a revolutionary leap forward. Thanks to his unique understanding of light and shadow, his evocative use of form, and his deeply personal exploration of the unseen canvas within us all. The words, my words, the very essence of my artistic philosophy, the metaphors I had shared only with her, the core themes of my Echoes of the Void series, twisted and attributed to Leo, presented as his original genius. The melancholic introspection she dismissively referenced was my life's work. The rage that surged through me was primal, obliterating all sense of social decorum. I pushed through the stunned onlookers, my voice a strangled shout. Vivienne, what is this? What have you done? She turned, her brilliant smile momentarily faltering. Then it hardened into something chilling. Her eyes, those intelligent eyes that once seemed to understand my soul, now held only a cold, calculated disdain. Julian, she said, her voice now dangerously low, but still amplified enough for those close by to hear. I thought you'd understand. Your aesthetic was simply a foundation. A good starting point, yes, for something truly commercial. Leo's vision is a brighter future. Your melancholy, while quaint, simply wouldn't resonate with modern audiences the way his fresh perspective will. She waved a dismissive hand, as if swatting away a fly. Leo, standing beside her, averted his gaze, a faint blush creeping up his neck, but he said nothing, just absorbed the praise and the spotlight. My legs gave out. The betrayal, the public humiliation, the sheer audacity of it all was a physical force. My canvas, my soul, had been stolen, repackaged, and sold, with me as the forgotten, discarded blueprint. I stumbled back, the roar of the crowd, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of surprised whispers, all fading into an unbearable, deafening silence in my own mind. I turned and fled, leaving behind not just a gallery, but the shattered fragments of my artistic life. The world outside the gallery was a blur of neon lights and the cold Santa Fe night. I walked for hours, blindly, The exquisite pain, a dull throb in my chest, then a searing agony. My studio, once a sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum. Every canvas, every brush, every tube of paint was tainted, a painful reminder of my gullibility, my misplaced trust. The shame was a suffocating blanket. I couldn't paint. The thought of touching a brush, of mixing colors, filled me with a profound revulsion. My creative spirit, once an unquenchable fire, was reduced to cold ash. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into a desolate abyss. I stopped eating, barely slept. The phone rang constantly, but I ignored it. Vivienne's number, Leo's, other gallery owners, curious reporters. I disconnected my landline, smashed my mobile, cutting myself off from a world that had not only betrayed me, but had also witnessed my public humiliation. I felt utterly hollowed out, a ghost haunting my own life. There were moments of rage, violent outbursts where I lashed out at the empty air, smashing old paint tubes, tearing down canvases. Then came the tears, endless, racking sobs that left me gasping for breath, clutching at my chest as if to hold my broken heart together. I questioned everything: my talent, my sanity, my judgment. Was she right? Was my art too melancholic? Was I truly just a foundation, a quaint predecessor to a brighter future? The insidious gaslighting had done its work, leaving me doubting the very essence of my being. But then, slowly, achingly, through the haze of despair, a sliver of clarity began to pierce through. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a misjudgment of character. This was deliberate, planned, a calculated act of artistic theft and emotional abuse. Vivienne hadn't discovered my melancholic style. She had identified its market value as a stepping stone, a foundation for someone else. Leo wasn't just an eager student. He was an accomplice, a willing mimic. They hadn't refined my vision. They had stolen it, bastardized it, and presented it as their own. The realization was both devastating and liberating. The shame began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard anger and a flicker of self-preservation. I wasn't just a victim. I had been a fool, yes, but my art, my true art, remained mine. It couldn't be truly replicated, not by them, because it was born of my soul. They had stolen the canvas, but not the unseen hand that guided it. I couldn't stay in Santa Fe. Every street, every adobe wall, every scent of sage and chili was tainted. I needed to disappear, to heal in anonymity. I made the difficult decision to sell off my remaining authentic works, the pieces that still felt like me, untouched by Vivienne's insidious influence. It was a painful transaction, a severing of ties, but the money would buy me time, buy me solitude. I packed only the essentials, a few changes of clothes, some journals, a small box of cherished photographs, and a bare minimum of paints and brushes. The rest, my entire artistic life, I left behind. My studio, once vibrant with creativity, became an empty shell, a relic of a life I could no longer inhabit. I bought a small, isolated cabin deep in the mountains, far from any gallery, any agent, any pretense. My first steps to leave were not a defiant roar, but a quiet, desperate retreat, a wounded animal seeking refuge. The cabin became my crucible. For months, I did nothing but exist. I chopped wood, stared at the endless sky, listened to the silence. The artistic spirit was not just crushed, it felt cauterized. I couldn't bring myself to touch a brush. The thought was nauseating, but the stillness, the utter lack of external pressure, slowly began to work its magic. I started to notice the intricate patterns in a fallen leaf, the way light broke through the aspens, the subtle shifts in color on a distant mountain peak. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the urge to see, truly see, returned. One cold afternoon, I picked up a piece of charcoal and a scrap of paper. I didn't try to paint. I just sketched, raw, unrefined, the contours of a gnarled tree outside my window. No thought of market, no concern for style, no fear of judgment. Just the act of observation, of putting line to surface. It felt cleansing. Over time, charcoal gave way to pen, then to watercolor, then, cautiously, to oils. My canvas was no longer a stage for public consumption, but a private journal. I painted for myself alone, the way I had before Vivienne, before Leo, before the accolades and the ambition. my new work was different. It was less abstract, more grounded in the immediate world around me. The textures of bark, the movement of clouds, the dance of light on snow. But it retained my essential melancholy, transformed now into a quiet reverence for the fragile beauty of existence. There was a raw honesty to it, a vulnerability I had almost forgotten. I still carry the scars. The wound of betrayal runs deep, and there are days when the cynicism creeps in, when the memory of Vivienne's chilling smile makes me question if art can ever truly exist in purity. But those days are fewer now. I understand that true art lies not in the validation of others, nor in the carefully curated narratives of deceitful intermediaries, but in the unwavering authenticity of the creator. I am Julian Thorne, the painter, once broken, now remade. I paint not for exhibitions, not for profit, not for fame. I paint because I must. I paint to heal, to breathe, to connect with the unseen canvas of my own soul, a space no one can ever steal from me again. This solitude, this quiet reclamation, is my masterpiece. It is the bittersweet but empowering closure of a life almost destroyed, and then, painstakingly, beautifully, rebuilt.